Chapter 1. The Party I Never Belonged to. I stood just inside the ballroom entrance with my jacket still on, scanning the room as if I were looking for an exit instead of a reason to stay. Everything gleamed: polished marble floors, soft amber lighting, glass walls that reflected people back at themselves like they mattered more here. Someone laughed too loudly near the bar. Someone else clinked a champagne flute for emphasis, as if punctuation required alcohol. This was my wife's world. It had never been mine. She had insisted I come. Not asked, insisted, in that careful tone that made it sound like a request while carrying the weight of expectation. "It'll mean a lot if you're there," she'd said while adjusting her hair in the mirror. "Just show your face. An hour, maybe less." So I came. That was the deal. A hostess with a practiced smile checked our names and handed us small, embossed name cards. Mine had my full name printed beneath my wife's title, smaller font, like a footnote. Hers was bold, executive level, important. She took the card without looking at me and was already moving forward, heels clicking with confidence, greeting people before we'd even cleared the doorway. "Claire," someone called. "Over here." She turned immediately, smile blooming like it had been waiting all day to be used. "Oh my God, hi," she said, voice warm, animated. She touched an arm, leaned in, laughed at something I hadn't heard. I lingered a step behind, hands awkward at my sides, nodding when eyes flicked toward me long enough to register I existed. A man in a tailored suit extended his hand. "Mark," he said. "Finance." I shook it. "Nice to meet you. And you are?" "Her husband." "Oh," he said, not unkindly. "Right. Of course." The conversation drifted away from me almost immediately, sliding back into quarterly projections and overseas travel like I'd never spoken. I watched my wife from across the small circle. She was effortless here, shoulders back, smile precise, eyes alert. This version of her moved differently, spoke differently. She belonged. I did not. I made my way to the bar, ordered a soda instead of a drink, and leaned against a high table that felt designed to keep people standing, mingling, never settling. Around me, conversations overlapped like competing radio stations. Bonuses, promotions, who was moving departments, who had been let go. Someone asked me what I did. When I answered, they nodded politely and turned away before I finished the sentence. I checked my watch. 37 minutes. Across the room, my wife caught my eye briefly. For a second, I thought she might come over. Instead, she lifted her glass slightly, a gesture that felt less like reassurance and more like acknowledgement. "I see you. I'm busy." I told myself not to take it personally. This was her night, her space. I was just present. A woman near me complained about the venue being a bit much, then immediately praised it when a senior manager joined the group. A man bragged about working through his vacation. Everyone seemed to be performing, and I couldn't figure out what role I was supposed to play. I wandered toward the windows, staring out at the city lights. From up here, everything looked orderly, controlled. No cracks visible from a distance. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from my wife. "You okay?" I typed back. "Yeah, all good." It wasn't a lie. I wasn't angry. I wasn't upset. I was just tired. Tired of pretending this place didn't make me feel smaller. Tired of standing in rooms where my value had to be explained instead of known. I found her again near the center of the room, surrounded by people. She looked radiant, confident, alive in a way that felt separate from me. When I approached, she glanced over, smile tightening just a fraction. "I'm going to head out," I said quietly, leaning in so only she could hear. Her brows lifted. "Already?" I stayed like we said. She hesitated, eyes flicking to the group around her. "Okay, drive safe." No argument. No protest. Just a quick nod, already turning back to someone else mid-sentence. I slipped my jacket on and moved toward the exit, feeling oddly relieved. I'd done my duty. I'd shown my face. In a few minutes, I'd be in my car, alone with my thoughts, the night returning to something manageable. I had no idea that I was about to leave more than just a party behind. Chapter 2. The door that should have stayed closed. I was halfway down the corridor when I heard it. At first, my brain refused to process the sound. It was muted, distorted slightly by the carpeted walls and soft background music leaking from the ballroom behind me. A low breath, then another. A quiet, broken laugh that didn't belong in a hallway meant for restrooms and exits. I slow my steps. Probably nothing, I told myself. Probably someone had too much to drink. I took another step, and then I heard it clearly. A rhythm, a sound that carried intention. Intimacy, the kind of sound you don't misinterpret once you've been married long enough. I stopped completely. The hallway was empty except for me. The restroom signs glowed softly at the end, men to the left, women to the right. The women's door was closed. From behind it came a soft, unmistakable murmur. A woman's voice, low and breathless. My wife's voice. My hand tightened around my jacket without realizing it. I didn't move closer. I didn't need to. Every instinct in my body was screaming what my mind was still trying to deny. Then the sound stopped. There was a pause, too long, too deliberate. Footsteps shifted inside. A lock clicked. The door opened. She stepped out first. My wife adjusted the strap of her dress, smoothing the fabric over her hip like she was fixing a wrinkle. Her hair was slightly disheveled, her cheeks flushed, not with embarrassment, but with something else. Something alive. Behind her came a man I recognized vaguely from earlier. Tall, well-groomed, expensive suit. The kind of confidence that comes from knowing you belong in rooms like this. They froze when they saw me. For a fraction of a second, something flashed across her face. Not guilt, not shame, annoyance. "Oh," she said flatly, "you're still here." The man straightened, clearly uncomfortable. I should go," he muttered, avoiding my eyes as he adjusted his cufflinks and walked past me without another word. The hallway felt suddenly too narrow. I looked at my wife. "I was leaving," I said. My voice sounded distant, even to me. She crossed her arms, weight shifting to one hip. "You always have the worst timing." I blinked. "I heard." "Hear what?" She interrupted quickly. "You were standing out here listening?" I stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman in front of me with the one I thought I knew. "I heard enough." She exhaled sharply, rolling her eyes. "You're blowing this way out of proportion." "Out of proportion?" I repeated quietly. "Yes," she snapped. "God, you always do this. You jump to conclusions instead of asking questions." I waited. My chest felt tight, but my face stayed still. "So ask me to understand," I said. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Nothing happened the way you're imagining. He was upset. I was helping him. You wouldn't understand because you're never emotionally available." There it was. I looked at the restroom door behind her, still slowly swinging closed. "Helping him," I said. "Don't start," she warned. "This is exactly what I mean. You're distant, you check out, and then you want to act shocked when I actually connect with someone." "Connect," I echoed. She shook her head like I was exhausting her. "You weren't even supposed to be here this long. You said you were leaving." I said. "I am." Her tone softened just enough to sound reasonable. "Then do that. Don't make a scene." "Not here." A scene. The word landed hard. I thought about raising my voice, about asking questions that deserved answers, about demanding explanations that should have been offered without being forced. Instead, I felt something settle inside me, heavy, cold, controlled. I nodded once. "Fine," I said. She studied my face, as if trying to read whether this would come back to haunt her later. "We'll talk about this when you're calmer," she added. "When you're ready to actually be present." I didn't respond. I turned and walked away, my footsteps steady, measured. I didn't look back. I didn't run. I didn't collapse. But with every step toward the exit, something inside me hardened into shape, quiet, deliberate, irreversible. And I didn't yet understand just how much that closed door had changed everything. Chapter 3. Silence is a Weapon. I didn't say a word on the drive home. The city lights blurred past my windshield as if nothing had changed, as if the world hadn't tilted a few degrees off its axis. My hand stayed steady on the wheel. No pounding chest, no shaking breath, just a dull pressure behind my eyes and a strange, ringing quiet in my head. I expected anger. I expected something loud. What I felt instead was focus. At home, I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and locked it behind me with deliberate care. The house was exactly the way we'd left it. Clean counters, shoes neatly by the door, the faint smell of laundry detergent lingering in the air. Normal. Domestic. A lie wrapped in routine. I set my keys down, took off my jacket, hung it where it always went. I didn't pour a drink. The thought crossed my mind, but I dismissed it immediately. Alcohol dulled edges. I needed them sharp. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the dark screen of my phone for a long moment, letting the silence press in around me. No television, no music, just the low hum of the refrigerator and my own breathing. Think, I told myself. Don't react. When I finally unlocked my phone, I didn't open messages first. I went to the call log. Her name appeared exactly where it always did. Frequent, familiar, comforting in a way that now felt obscene. I scrolled past it slowly, carefully, until another number appeared again and again. No name, just digits. 3 calls yesterday, 5 the day before that. Long durations. My jaw tightened. I tapped into the detailed log and pulled up the past few months. The pattern emerged quickly once I stopped pretending I didn't see it. Calls during lunch breaks. Late evenings when she said she was wrapping things up. Weekends when she'd stepped out to run an errand. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. This didn't start tonight. The realization settled without drama. No spike of pain, just confirmation. I moved to messages next. Her texts to me were short, efficient. Running late. Busy day. We'll talk later. The warmth that used to be there had faded so gradually I hadn't noticed the temperature drop. I didn't have access to her private messages. She'd been careful. But patterns didn't need content to tell their story. Upstairs, the bedroom light was off. I didn't go up. Instead, I opened my laptop at the kitchen table and logged into our shared phone account. Passwords were funny things, so easy to trust with the wrong people. Detailed billing statements loaded slowly, line by line, as if the system itself was reluctant to show me what I'd asked for. There was again, the same number, and another one. I froze. A second unknown number appeared regularly too, not as frequent, but consistent. Longer calls, fewer texts, but clustered closely together, like conversations that mattered. I wrote both numbers down on a scrap of paper, my handwriting neat, controlled. No shaking, no hesitation. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Midnight passed without ceremony. At some point, I went upstairs and laid down on the bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. I didn't turn on the light. I didn't reach for her pillow. Sleep came in fragments, short, shallow stretches interrupted by images I refused to fully replay. When morning came, I got up quietly, showered, dressed, ate breakfast. She wasn't home yet. I checked the phone records again, this time with fresh eyes. I filtered by duration, sorted by frequency, exported the data. This wasn't paranoia. This was documentation. As the hours passed, something inside me shifted from hurt to resolve. The story forming in front of me wasn't messy or impulsive. It was organized, intentional, long-running. I folded the scrap of paper with the numbers on it and slid it into my wallet. Still, I didn't call anyone. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask questions that could be answered with lies. Silence, I was beginning to understand, wasn't weakness. It was a weapon, and I was finally learning how to hold it. Chapter 4, the second number. I waited until the house was quiet. Not just empty, quiet in the way it gets when no one expects to be overheard. Mid-morning light filtered through the blinds, striping the kitchen floor in pale lines. My coffee sat untouched beside my laptop, long since gone cold. I've been staring at the same 2 numbers for nearly an hour. One of them I already recognized. I didn't need a name attached to understand who it belonged to. The call frequency told me enough. Late nights, short bursts during work hours, the kind of communication people think they can hide inside busy schedules. The second number bothered me more. It didn't fit the pattern of an affair. The calls were longer, less frequent, often during the day, sometimes early in the morning, sometimes on weekends. Not rushed, not stolen, deliberate. I picked up my phone and typed the digits in manually, double-checking each one as if accuracy might soften whatever waited on the other end. My thumb hovered over the call button. This changes things, a voice in my head warned. I pressed call anyway. It rang twice. Hello. A man's voice. Cautious. Older than I expected. Calm but guarded. Hi, I said. I'm calling because this number has been in my wife's phone records. Silence. I don't think she was expecting you to call me, he said slowly. I don't think so either. Another pause. I could hear him breathing now, the faint sound of a television somewhere in the background. Who are you, he asked. My name is... I stopped myself, swallowing. I'm her husband. The television went silent. I think there's been a misunderstanding, he said after a moment, but his voice had shifted. Less certain. She told me she was separated. I closed my eyes. Not in pain, just in acknowledgement. She told a lot of people a lot of things, I said. How long have you two been talking? There was a long exhale on the other end. A few months, he admitted. She reached out first. Said she'd been thinking about the past. About unfinished business. Did she tell you why you broke up? I asked. Yes, he said. She said I walked away. That I didn't want responsibility. I stared at the wall across from me. At a family photo we'd taken years ago. Did you? No, he said immediately. Too quickly for it to be rehearsed. I didn't even know there was anything to walk away from. My grip tightened on the phone. What do you mean? He hesitated, then spoke carefully. She told me about the child 3 months ago. The room felt smaller. She said she'd raised him alone, he continued. That she didn't want to complicate my life back then. That she was giving me the chance now to know him, if I wanted. I felt something cold slide into place inside my chest. Did she tell you how old he is? Yes, he said. He stopped. He's 12. My throat tightened. Did she tell you who raised him? Another pause. This one heavier. She said you were a stand-in, he said quietly. That you knew. I laughed once. It came out wrong. Sharp. Humorless. I didn't. Silence stretched between us, thick with the weight of what we were both understanding at the same time. You're telling me, he said slowly, that she never told you she contacted me. No. And she never told you she told me about the child. No. And she never told you. He broke off. Jesus. I sat down at the table, suddenly aware that my legs were tired. When she told you about him, I asked, did she say why she waited? Yes, he said. She said she was protecting him, that she didn't want a man drifting in and out of his life. I closed my eyes again. This time it hurt. I would have stayed, he said. His voice cracked slightly, just enough to sound real. If I'd known, I would have stayed. I would have done anything. I believe you, I said, surprising both of us. He was quiet for a moment. Then, what do you want from me? The question was fair. I considered it carefully. Right now, I said, nothing. I just needed to know what kind of man you were. And, he asked. I looked at the photo on the wall again. At the boy smiling between us, his arms slung around our shoulders. Not the one I was warned about. He exhaled slowly. She lied to both of us, he said. Yes, I agreed. But she didn't just lie. She built something on those lies. When the call ended, I sat there for a long time, phone resting face down on the table. The betrayal had grown teeth. This wasn't just about desire or carelessness. This was about rewriting history, about stealing choices, about deciding who deserved the truth and who didn't. And I understood then that what I was dealing with wasn't a broken marriage. It was something far darker. Chapter 5, Advice, not anger. I didn't call her. That decision alone felt like restraint wrapped in discipline. Every instinct told me to confront her, to demand explanations, to force the truth into the open where it couldn't keep mutating in the dark. But instincts were emotional, and emotions, I was learning, were liabilities. Instead, I called Daniel. He'd been my attorney years ago for a routine business matter, nothing dramatic. Smart, careful, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. When he answered, his voice was calm, unhurried. Mark, he said, this isn't a social call, is it? No, I replied. I need advice, and I need it before I do something irreversible. There was a pause. Then you did the right thing calling me first. Start from the beginning. I didn't dramatize it. I laid out the facts. The bathroom, the phone records, the second number, the ex-husband, the child. When I finished, the line stayed silent for a moment longer than was comfortable. Have you confronted her? Daniel asked. No good, he said immediately. And you're not going to. That surprised me. At some point I will. Not yet, he said. Right now, you know more than she thinks you do. That's leverage. If you confront her now, she'll lie, cry, destroy evidence, and reposition herself. You don't want a reaction. You want a record. I stared at the wall, letting that settle. So what do? You observe, he said. You document. And you keep acting normal. Normal, I repeated. Yes. Eat dinner. Ask about her day. Don't tip your hand. His tone sharpened slightly. And whatever you do, don't access anything illegally. Everything you find has to be clean. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, phone in my hand, feeling something new take shape. Not rage. Not despair. Clarity. That night, when she came home, I did exactly what Daniel told me to do. Long day, I asked, setting plates on the table. She looked almost surprised. Yeah, she said cautiously. You? Same. She watched me for a second, like she was waiting for a trap to spring. When it didn't, she relaxed. We ate. We talked about nothing. Weather. Schedules. A show she wanted to watch later. I smiled when I was supposed to. Later, when she went to bed, I stayed downstairs and opened my laptop. I started with what was mine to see. Our joint accounts, credit cards, monthly statements. At first glance, everything looked normal. Bills paid on time. Balances within expected ranges. It would have been easy, comforting even to stop there. To tell myself I was imagining things. So I didn't. I exported the data, sorted it by date, then by amount. Patterns emerged. Small withdrawals at regular intervals. Amounts low enough to avoid attention. A few hundred here. 1,000 there. Always rounded. Always consistent. I cross-referenced them with deposits. There it was. An account I didn't recognize. Not joint. Not business. Personal. Her name only. My pulse didn't spike. It slowed. I dug deeper. A vehicle title transfer from months ago. Quiet. Efficient. Retitled solely in her name. No discussion. No reason given. Just paperwork executed with precision. I checked the child's college fund next. The balance made my stomach drop. Withdrawals. Not enough to trigger alerts. Enough to matter. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my face slowly. This wasn't someone acting on impulse. This wasn't panic or desperation. This was planning. She'd been moving pieces for a long time, money, assets, narratives. Building exits while smiling across dinner tables. Preparing for contingencies I hadn't even imagined. I opened a spreadsheet and started documenting everything. Dates, amounts, account numbers. I didn't rush. I didn't skip steps. At one point, I heard her footsteps upstairs. A door opening, closing. Mark, she called softly. In a minute, I replied, keeping my voice even. Don't stay up too late, she said. I waited until her bedroom door closed again before returning to the numbers on my screen. By the time I shut the laptop, the sun was just beginning to rise. My coffee sat untouched beside me, cold and forgotten. I wasn't angry. I was impressed. And that scared me more than rage ever could. Because now I understood the truth. This wasn't chaos. This was design. Chapter 6, the walls start closing in. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Not certified. Not dramatic. Just a clean envelope addressed to me. My name typed neatly as if whoever sent it had practiced restraint. I opened it at the kitchen counter while the coffee brewed, the house still quiet, the morning pretending to be ordinary. Notice of intent to establish paternity. I read it twice, then a third time. The biological father had filed. I wasn't surprised, but surprise had stopped being the point. What caught me was the timing. Careful. Considered. He hadn't rushed. He'd consulted someone. He'd chosen the moment when truth had weight behind it. I folded the letter and set it down flat, aligning the edges with the counter like I could square the world by being precise. My phone buzzed. Daniel. Right on time. They filed, I said when I answered. Yes, he replied. I saw it come through this morning. So it's real. It's real, he said. And it was inevitable. I closed my eyes briefly. What does this change? Not as much as you think, Daniel said. But it accelerates things. We'll need to be ahead of it. We are, I said. And for the first time, I meant it. Later that afternoon, I met the forensic accountant Daniel had recommended. She was sharp-eyed, direct, the kind of professional who didn't waste words on comfort. She slid a folder across the table. We're still digging, she said, but the preliminary findings are significant. How significant? I asked. Over $50,000, she said calmly. Siphoned slowly. Structured withdrawals. Clean enough to avoid flags. Dirty enough to matter. My jaw tightened. From where? Multiple sources, she replied. Joint accounts. The child's fund. Small transfers into a personal account opened years ago. Whoever did this understood thresholds. Meaning it wasn't panic, she said. It was intent. I nodded once. Can you document all of it? I already am. When I got home that evening, my wife was on the couch, scrolling through her phone, legs tucked beneath her like nothing in the world had shifted. Hey, she said, glancing up. You're late. Work ran long, I replied. She shrugged. I might order takeout. You want anything? No, I said. I'm fine. She studied me for a second, then smiled. You've been really calm lately. I met her gaze. Have I? Yeah, she said lightly. It's nice. That night, after she went upstairs, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I let ring once, twice, then answered. Mark, a man asked. His voice was tight, controlled. Yes. This is Evan, he said. From the party. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. I leaned back in my chair. Go ahead. There was a pause, then a rush. I didn't know, he said quickly. About your marriage. About any of it. She told me it was over. That you were barely around. I didn't respond. I found out this morning, he continued. HR pulled me in. There's an internal investigation. That was fast, I said. Yeah, he said. Apparently she wasn't as discreet as she thought. I told him everything. Messages. Calls. I gave them full access. I considered that. Why are you telling me this? Because I don't want to be part of this, he said. I was lied to. And because... I'm sorry. The word hung there, fragile. Thank you for calling, I said finally. He exhaled. I hope your kid's okay. So do I. When the call ended, I sat there in the quiet, the pieces aligning whether I pushed them or not. Legal pressure, financial exposure, professional fallout. The walls were closing in. And still, she acted like nothing was wrong. The next morning, she kissed my cheek on her way out the door. Don't forget, she said, we have dinner with the neighbors on Friday. I won't, I replied. She smiled, confident, comfortable in a reality she thought she controlled. I watched her leave, the door clicking shut behind her, and understood something with absolute clarity. The collapse wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be sudden. It would be methodical, and she wouldn't see it coming until there was nowhere left to stand. Chapter 7. The question no child should ask. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon, in the space between homework and dinner. He came in quieter than usual, backpack dropped by the door instead of hung on the hook. I noticed it immediately, not because I was watching for trouble, but because when you raise a child, you learn the sound of their footsteps the way sailors learn the wind. Hey, buddy, I said from the kitchen. Everything okay? He didn't answer right away. I heard the fridge open, then close. A pause. Then his voice, smaller than it should have been. Can I ask you something? I turned off the stove. Of course. He came to the table, but didn't sit. Just stood there, fingers hooked into the strap of his backpack like it was an anchor. His eyes wouldn't quite meet mine. Someone at school said something. He began. I pulled out a chair and sat, making sure I was level with him. What did they say? He swallowed. They said you're not my real dad. The words landed softly and still managed to knock the air out of the room. I didn't react. Not outwardly. No sharp inhale. No tightening jaw. I held his gaze and waited a beat, giving him space to keep going. They said my mom told someone, he added quickly, like he was trying to protect me from the blow. I told them they were lying. But his voice trailed off. But it stuck, I said gently. He nodded. I reached across the table and rested my hand over his. Thank you for telling me. Is it true? He asked. There it was. The question no child should ever have to carry. I could have lied. I could have smoothed it over with something easy, something temporary. But lies don't protect children. They just delay the damage. So I chose the narrow path between honesty and safety. There are different ways to be a dad, I said carefully. Some people help make you. Some people raise you. Some people do both. He frowned, processing. So, which one are you? I squeezed his hand once. I'm the one who raised you. I'm the one who's here. That part doesn't change. His shoulders dropped just a little. But are you? I'm your dad, I said firmly. That's not a title someone can take away because of a rumor. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, why would someone say that? I chose my words the way you choose steps across thin ice. Sometimes adults make mistakes. Sometimes they say things they shouldn't, especially when they're dealing with stuff they don't know how to handle. He nodded slowly. Did I do something wrong? The question cut deeper than the first. No, I said immediately. You didn't do anything wrong. Not even a little. He looked at me then, really looked like he was checking for cracks. You promise? I promise, I said. This isn't your problem to solve. He finally sat down. Okay. We sat there together for a few minutes, the house settling around us. Outside, a lawnmower hummed somewhere down the street. Ordinary life insisting on itself. After a while, he asked, Are you mad? I considered the truth. I'm serious, I said. And I'm careful, but I'm not mad at you. I could never be. He seemed to accept that. Can I go finish my homework? Yeah, I said. I'll be right here. When he went upstairs, I stayed at the table long after his footsteps faded. My hand was steady, my breathing slow, but something inside me locked into place. This wasn't about pride anymore, or betrayal, or even justice in the abstract. This was about a child who deserved stability, a child who deserved truth delivered with care, a child who didn't ask to be pulled into adult failures. My phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't look at it. Whatever came next, courtrooms, accusations, fallout, it would be measured against one standard now. Protect him. Even if it meant accelerating a war I'd been carefully pacing. Even if it meant standing alone. That was the line, and I would not let anyone cross it. Chapter 8, served. She didn't come home that night on time. I knew why before she told me. Her number flashed on my phone just after 6. I answered without changing my expression, without bracing myself. They served me, she said. Her voice was tight, brittle. At work, in front of people. Yes, I replied. There was a sharp inhale on the other end. You did that on purpose. I did it correctly, I said. There's a difference. Silence stretched between us, charged now, stripped of the comfort she used to hide behind. When she spoke again, the confidence was gone. My boss pulled me into a conference room, she said. HR was there. They asked questions. About him. About money. About things that had nothing to do with my job. They have everything they need, I said calmly. Her voice rose. You humiliated me. No, I said. Your choices did that. She came home an hour later, heels abandoned somewhere between the car and the door. She didn't take her coat off, just stood in the entryway like she wasn't sure she was allowed to step any further. They're investigating him, she said, pacing. He's been suspended. Pending review. I leaned against the kitchen counter. I know. She stopped and stared at me. Ow! Because he called me, I said. And because he cooperated. Her mouth opened, then closed. You talked to him? Yes. She shook her head, laughing once, sharp and disbelieving. Of course you did. You always need to be the hero. I didn't do this to be a hero, I said. I did to end it. She stepped closer, eyes bright, desperate now. We can fix this. We don't need lawyers. We could talk like adults. We are talking like adults, I replied. Adults use attorneys. Her tone shifted, softened. What about our son? That's why we're here, I said. She flinched. You're using him. No, I said evenly. I'm protecting him. She crossed her arms. You don't get to decide everything. I didn't, I said. You did. For years. Her breathing quickened. You think you're so calm, so righteous. But you were never there. You checked out long before I did. I nodded once. That's one of the stories you tell yourself. She scoffed. It's the truth. Then let's go through facts, I said. I opened the folder on the table and slid it toward her. She didn't touch it. Phone records, I continued. Messages. Financial transfers. The personal account you opened 3 years ago. The vehicle you retitled. The withdrawals from the college fund. Her face drained of color. You contacted your ex-husband, I went on. Told him lies. Told me none of it. Told your coworker the marriage was over. Told everyone a different version of the truth. She whispered my name, like she was reaching for something familiar. I'm not finished, I said. She sank into a chair. You don't get to frame this as emotional neglect, I said quietly. You don't get to call it confusion or loneliness. This was planning. Tears spilled now, unchecked. I was trying to protect myself. You were protecting exits, I said. At our son's expense. She looked up sharply. Don't you dare. He already heard the rumors, I said. From classmates. From adults who shouldn't have spoken. Her face crumpled. I handled it, I added. Because that's what I do. She covered her face. Please, let's just slow this down. I shook my head. We're done slowing down. She reached for my arm. I stepped back. From now on, I said, you don't call me about legal matters. You don't text me explanations. You don't try to manage this emotionally. Her voice broke. So that's it? Yes. All communication goes through our attorneys. I finished. She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Maybe she was. I picked up the folder and closed it with care. This isn't revenge, I said. It's resolution. She didn't respond. And for the first time since that night in the hallway, I knew, with absolute certainty, that the power had already shifted. Chapter 9. The Inevitable Outcome. The courthouse smelled the same as it always did. Polished floors, worn leather chairs, and the faint scent of disinfectant masking 100 whispered arguments. I arrived early, folder in hand, the leather worn along the edges from constant review. Every document, every statement, every phone record was neatly tabulated, highlighted, and cross-referenced. I didn't need theatrics. I had facts. She arrived later, hair perfectly in place, makeup flawless, a mask of calm over what I knew must have been panic. She walked in with her attorney, a man who seemed to be learning as fast as she was losing. I didn't rise. I didn't nod. I let her settle first. Courtrooms had a rhythm, and mine was patience. The judge entered, neutral, professional. No raised eyebrows, no hints of bias, exactly what I needed. Mr. Harper, the judge said, we will begin with the financial disclosures. I opened my folder slowly, as if unveiling each piece individually, though it had been reviewed 1,000 times. Each page told the story she had tried to hide. Transfers, withdrawals, retitled assets, personal accounts, child funds depleted. Each figure spoke louder than any accusation she could make. Her attorney leaned forward, whispering rapid questions and defensive suggestions. I ignored them. I had done the work. No argument could counter months of meticulous documentation. Your Honor, I began, calm, steady, measured. The financial activity presented here reflects long-term planning to conceal assets and misrepresent the state of our marital finances. These documents are unaltered and verifiable. The judge nodded. Noted. Any contest? Her attorney hesitated. Objection, methodology, overruled, the judge said. Documentation is clear. Her face tightened. I didn't gloat. There was no need. The truth was sufficient. It always is. Next came custody. I had anticipated her attempts to spin narratives, to manipulate testimony, to frame me as absentee or cold. But her words faltered under the evidence. My consistent involvement, my handling of the child's confusion about paternity, my preparation for stability. Witnesses confirmed routines, school involvement, emotional care. When it was my turn to speak, I did so plainly. I have raised my son, attended to his needs, and prioritized his emotional stability. My actions reflect a consistent pattern of care and responsibility. I am requesting primary custody to ensure continuity in his life. Her attorney tried to interrupt, but the judge held firm. Proceed. I did not need to embellish. The record spoke clearly. Texts, call logs, financial statements, teacher letters, pediatrician notes, all aligned. Hours passed with procedural detail. Questions, clarifications, minor objections. But there was no drama, no spectacle, just facts, calm, methodical, undeniable. When the judge finally leaned back, pen in hand, she began reading the verdict. Her voice was steady, professional, impartial. Based on the evidence presented, primary custody is awarded to Mr. Harper. All financial discrepancies are to be rectified, assets returned, and child funds restored. The marital estate is to be divided as documented. A brief pause. Communication regarding the child and finances will proceed through legal representatives. I exhaled once. Only once. The tension didn't release in triumph, but in acknowledgement. Every carefully laid plan had borne fruit. Every quiet hour of preparation, Every measured decision, every moment I restrained emotion and documented truth, it had led here. Her face fell imperceptibly. I didn't look. I didn't need to. The documents, the records, the facts, they had collapsed her narrative without a single emotional outburst from me. The theater she had counted on was irrelevant. She had no lines, no stage, no audience. I closed my folder carefully, sliding it back into the briefcase. Outside the courtroom, the sun hit the steps in golden slices. I breathed it in slowly, steadying myself for the drive home. Nothing flashy, no vindictive gestures, just inevitable resolution. The child's welfare, my responsibility, and the truth had prevailed over lies and manipulation. And that finally felt complete. Chapter 10, What Remains. The morning sun fell gently through the kitchen windows, scattering light across the table where my son was coloring. His crayons rolled quietly on the paper, bright streaks of green and blue and red forming shapes that made sense only to him. I watched from the doorway, letting him work, not interrupting. "Hey, champ," I said softly, leaning against the doorframe. "What you making today?" He looked up, eyes bright but cautious. "Just a family," he said, turning the paper toward me. "It's us." I smiled and walked over, kneeling beside him. The drawing showed 3 stick figures. One larger, one medium, one small. The largest one was me, or at least the one he had labeled Dad in shaky, careful letters. The medium figure, he explained quietly, was his biological father. The smallest was himself. I took a deep breath. This is the hard part, I thought. Introducing boundaries, structure, and truth without fracturing him. "Do you want to see him today?" I asked gently. He hesitated, fingers tapping the paper. "I think maybe, but only for a little." "Perfect," I said. "We'll keep it short. And if you want to leave, we leave. No pressure, okay?" He nodded. I could see the relief in his eyes that I respected his pace. That this wasn't a forced change, but a choice he could make. When his biological father arrived, I stayed back in the living room, letting him enter first. He looked nervous, uncertain, holding a small toy in his hand, as though it could bridge the gap between the past and the present. "Hi," I said simply, keeping my voice calm. "I'm Mark. Thanks for coming." He nodded, swallowing. I don't want to overstep." "You won't," I said. "We'll take it slow. Today is just introductions. Nothing else." In the kitchen, our son shifted slightly between us. "Hi," he said softly, clutching a toy car. "Hey, buddy," his biological father replied. "I'm glad to finally meet you." There were awkward smiles, pauses where nobody spoke, the kind of silence that stretches between strangers who are trying desperately to be careful around someone they love. I stayed close enough to intervene, but far enough to let them interact. I watched as my son handed his father the toy car, tested the water with small talk about school and favorite games. Every sentence, every gesture, reinforced that he still saw me as his anchor. That trust hadn't wavered. When the visit ended, we walked him to the door. He clutched my hand the whole way. "Bye, Dad," he said without hesitation. "Bye, buddy," I replied, squeezing his hand gently. "See you soon." Later, after they left, I sat at my desk reviewing business reports. Our company had finally begun to grow at the pace I'd hoped for. The legal battle, the betrayal, the late nights of strategizing, it had all bled into this moment, steady, productive, quiet. I checked emails, signed contracts, made calls. Life was moving forward, measured and controlled, the chaos of the past replaced by structure and focus. In the evening, my son came running into the office with another drawing. "Look," he said proudly. I set aside my laptop. He handed me the paper. This one had our little family again. He had drawn the 3 stick figures in more detail, smiles, hair, even a small house around us. And again, the largest figure was labeled clearly. "Dad." I felt a lump in my throat. Not regret, not bitterness, not triumph, just clarity. I had survived betrayal. I had rebuilt. I had protected him. And he still saw me as his father, not just in title, but in presence, in trust, in love. I hung the drawing on the refrigerator in the same place as the others he had made over the years. Each one told a story of growth, of innocence, of resilience. And each one reminded me of what really mattered. I went back to my chair, watching him play, listening to the faint hum of the city outside. My business was thriving. My home was stable. My son was safe. And for the first time in a long while, I could let myself believe that some things had endured, even after all the lies. I didn't need a dramatic conclusion, a grand gesture, or validation from anyone else. The quiet victory in that kitchen, in the sunlit morning, in the way he called me Dad, was enough. And as he ran off to grab another crayon, leaving a trail of color across the floor, I knew this was what remained, the life I fought for, intact, solid, undeniable. A family rebuilt, a child secure, a father present. All that mattered.